Coming up next, let's take a look at indie game Punch Planet, a competitive sci-fi 2D fighter with mysterious planets, advanced cities, and alien races by Sector K Games.
Yeah. Oh, we're good? Oh, okay, cool. What's up, guys? My name is Swift. Welcome to the Punch Planet Dev Q&A panel. Before we get this party started, we'll give you a quick rundown of what we're all about with a quick little trailer. Let's get this party started.
The ID of assistant citizen. You're under arrest.
Ready? Engage.
Freeze.
Am I on? No. Okay. Let me.
Freeze.
Don't give up yet. Decision player 2.
Gotcha.
Ready? Engage.
Thrusters.
Don't give up yet. Decision player 1.
MDK.
Overtime. Engage.
You want this? Punk. On your back. Freeze. On your back. Freeze. Free. Punk.
Don't give up yet. Decision player 1.
Don't get attached to your head.
Mark located.
Ready? Engage.
Watch out.
All right. That was a wonderful little demonstration of the game so far. But before we actually get started, we do want to play a proper trailer for you guys. So stick around. We'll get this party started one more time. All right, now that was a little better, right, guys? All right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Swift. Welcome to the Punch Planet Q&A Dev Panel. I am joined by the 3 developers of the Punch Planet game that you just saw on the screen. This is going to be Will, I have Lee, and Paul. Thank you guys all so much for joining us so far. We are hoping to show you guys a bit of what we're all about. So let me give a quick little rundown of Punch Planet. Punch Planet is an indie fighting game developed by Sector K. It is a 6-button fighter that is currently being in development. It's been in development for a little while, but so far it has been an absolute blast to be a part of. And I'm hoping to give you guys a quick little insight of what it's all about with the dev team here. So before we get started, I'll talk a little bit about what we do and how we run things. So with Punch Planet, it's mostly a more of a community-based game. It's not too big, but that's okay. Our community is probably some of the most dedicated and most fanatic type people that I think I've ever met in a fighting game. We have done so many cool things. We do so many awesome fundraisers. We've done so many different charity events. We do tournaments almost every week. I haven't had a chance to really do a whole lot lately, but as me myself, because I'm usually the guy who runs most of the weeklies that we have. I run the Punch Planet Thursdays weekly, but that's mostly what I do myself. But for the most part, yeah, that is kind of a nice quick little rundown of what we do. So we'll go ahead and get into this Q&A since we're already a little bit on time when it came to our trailer. So I will go ahead and get this started. We went ahead and did Q&A with the Discord itself. We asked a bunch of community members in the Discord to go ahead and send us some questions to kind of get an idea of what they were kind of seeking when it came to asking the dev team. This is actually, I believe, probably the first or second time this team's actually ever done this. So there's a lot of cool stuff that we have not actually been able to share. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'll go ahead and start with the first question. This one will be production related, or origin related, excuse me. Someone, HG6, asked, what inspired you to start making Punch Planet in the first place? And we'll go ahead and go down the line here. We'll start off with Will.
Yeah, my name's Will. I'm the programmer and gameplay designer on Punch Planet. For about 2.5 years, I've been working on my own fighting game engine with no real design or anything. Basically a blank slate while I built out the tech. I was posting builds online and videos for people to try out and give me feedback, and hoping for to find someone that wanted to come on and collaborate and take over the design and art side. And so I just kept doing that until I found someone.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's really cool when you're kind of getting into that kind of production. You're just looking for the right link to really make that happen. And I think you managed to find it eventually.
Yeah, I definitely hit the jackpot, I feel like.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead and move on down to what made that magic happen. Lee, so kind of give us an idea of what he's going on about.
So, yeah, I'm Lee. I'm the art director/producer, but I always wanted to make fighting games. Just growing up, obsessed with fighting games, drawing all the art from fighting games, and at some point I started wanting to make a prototype, try and make that happen, and one of my friends introduced me to the progress Will was posting online for his engine. And so I reached out, and I was like, hey, we should collaborate and do something together, because I was more interested in designing the character's look and gameplay. I didn't really want to focus on making the engine. That's way too hard. Will has to do that. And we started making builds, bringing them to various places in New York. We'd bring it to NLBC or MashFest, and Will in NorCal. And that's actually how we met Paul.
That's awesome.
Yeah, hi, I'm Paul. I do the sound design and the music for Punch Planet. I've been doing tournaments for a long time. I'm working in games for a long time, and I always really wanted to do sound for a game, and I was lucky enough to run into Will at a local tournament in San Francisco, and took a break from getting beat up in that game to go try out this cool looking fighting game, and they were using one sound effect for everything, and the rest is kind of history there.
That's awesome. But it's really cool because nothing is more FGC than meeting at an event, and then that's how you get your work together.
Yeah, the first thing me and Lee did too, before we got into the nitty gritty about working on a game together, we had to fight. We had to play a match.
You had to fight each other first before you can act I need to test you before I actually was willing to work with you.
Knowledge check you.
Nothing is more powerful. It's like what Reed talks about. He's we must challenge you to see you. So it's a nice little happy accident in that way. But that's awesome. That's awesome. So in the same vein, we'll go ahead and move on to the next question here. Let's say, Eating Pets asked, did you guys have a pretty complete idea of the mechanics you wanted? before starting, or did some mechanics pop up during development? Once again, I'll start off with Will on this one.
Yeah, so when I was working on my own engine, I named it the double tap engine, and so that can kind of give you an idea of what mechanic I wanted to iterate on and kind of mess with, which was I wanted to have a cancel mechanic that was like easy to do with a 6-button layout, and so double tapping a button when it hits was kind of a logical example for me, and so I wanted to iterate on that while I worked on the tech side, and that came out. It went through a lot of iteration, and it started feeling pretty good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
And then once we started working on Punch Planet itself, we knew we wanted like an absorption defensive mechanic. We wanted it to be like frame one, so it could kind of blow up, situations. And so we did the ATC, which is a parry-like mechanic. That went through some iterations as well. There was like originally it was like a focus and then auto attack if it hit, and then you could do stuff out of that. But we wanted to just keep it open.
Yeah, it definitely fleshed out really well when you're looking at it at the beginning, because at first it gets kind of people off guard when they're trying to do the DTC, which is double time cancel for people unaware. But it gets kind of people off guard because they're trying to, they're pressing a couple buttons a little too fast. But once they get it, it's just completely like muscle memory.
Yeah, the DTC was nice because it's kind of a double-edged sword in that it makes it easy for people to do. And if they don't know it exists, it comes out on accident, and they see it and they're like, "Oh wow, what was that?" And they can get a cool combo off of it. But on the other side, it makes you have to be more precise, because if you are mashing, you'll spend your bar. And
you'll lose your meter.
So I kind of like that it's both sides of it, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, especially when it comes to newer mechanics, especially in games right now where mechanics are kind of being all sorts of different games are coming up with all sorts of different wacky ideas, and so having something that's really unique to the Punch Planet system itself is what makes it really kind of stand out. The DTC just by itself is just its own, just massive, like this massive book of options that you can have out of it. So it's really cool.
Yeah, and then the JTC, we wanted to have like an overhead mechanic, but I wanted to give it a little bit more options from it, so you can do the empty version of it. There's mix-up potential there, and then over time, we kind of wanted to give it a little bit more utility, and so now it's kind of a combo extending tool. If you use it in a combo, you get more juggle. And that was a nice little balance as well.
Yeah, and like most of these were mostly actually in your mind when you were actually starting off working on Punch Planet, right? Or were these kind of popped up, in the middle of development, or was it more like that? These were kind of already set in stone when you were starting off on the systems.
The JTC definitely came out after a little bit of working on the game. We wanted to have some type of mobility, and something that also we wanted to have another part of the inputs, because the parry is for mediums, and if you just press the buttons on their own, we wanted something to happen as well.
All right, yeah, very cool. Yeah, so that's a nice little idea of just how the mechanics are currently evolving. As much as it works, I believe most of it is mostly kind of set in stone right now, which has been absolutely awesome to see. But of course, this game is still in development. It is actually currently in early access. You can get it on Steam, of course. So that kind of goes. We're going to go ahead and start getting into the more development questions. So I'll go ahead and start with this one. Pickles asked, "What makes making a fighting game more difficult or less difficult than making other games?" I think I'll start off with. Let's go ahead and start with Will on this one.
Oh yeah, so fighting games are pretty hard to make because there's just the sheer amount of interactions that are happening and can happen, and having to balance them and make sure they're all behaving in the way that you want. It's a lot of work. So like every character in a 6-button game, they have 6 normals standing, 6 normals crouching, 6 normals in the air. That's only the normals, and then all the specials. It's a lot of work to just iterate on that and make sure everything's like in a set place.
Yeah.
Especially, and then trying to balance it and make sure it's all fun. Make sure your Oki is not, oppressive and stuff like that.
Right, exactly. Because there have been many times in development where we had some pretty funky interactions. So that's part of the fun.
Yeah, that was the whole point of putting it out early, was that so we could, get that kind of feedback and testing, and it's fun working on it as it evolves and stuff.
Yeah.
So
and in that same vein, I know, for example, you've been working on fighting games for a while now with this engine, but I want to kind of get this over to on Paul's side, who is new to or was kind of getting interested into the fighting games. You mostly worked on other games before this, and so how were the challenges for this in making a fighting game? What was the challenges for you when you're coming from like some more single player interactions from your other endeavors?
Working on a competitive game just provides a whole different array of challenges in terms of making sure the sound design cuts through in a way that's impactful and it conveys all the information to a player. In a single-player story-based experience, there's a lot more it's about immersiveness and the vibe. And so in a fighting game, you really want to cut out all the fat and just have like really critical sounds cutting through and serving their purpose. But there's also, you got to sneak in the flavor and really try to bring the characters to life in a way that doesn't get in the way of the players being able to parse the information they need to be able to make the right decisions in a matchup. So yeah, that's pretty much like the big difference is like the sound design's a lot more laser focused and you have to be a lot more creative with how you use it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like when you go creating a character from not having the sound in, and then we put it in, it's like it really makes the character stand out so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy because that's one of the common things that we hear when people start joining into the game is as they start kind of getting into it and start swinging and start hitting people, the sound design really kind of makes all that pop really well. And so that's awesome when it comes to. You seem to have kind of acclimated pretty well to the challenge. You seem to kind of taken it pretty easily. So that's great. That's great. But I'm not letting you slide on this one, Lee. I'm not gonna let you slide. I got you on the same vein. Speed McCool asks, on average, how long does it take for you to nail down a new character's design?
On average, it's about 2 to 6 months, and usually before I get started, I'll have I know what the character is going to look like, and I have a document where I've like outlined roughly what I believe the frame data is going to be, and then for about a month I'll do like a proxy prototype, and that will essentially vet the frame data, and once the character really starts to shape up, then I can start to spend like a month or two refining the animations, asking Will for stuff that isn't in the engine that needs to be in the engine to make the character function how we want it to function. And then sort of back to what we were just talking about, the icing on the cake, which is Paul goes in and adds all the amazing sounds.
Yes.
And it definitely, as Will said, goes like it really bumps it up especially when you've been prototyping the character for so many months, and then suddenly there's all this amazing sound design in it. It's like, oh, amazing.
It just comes together.
Yeah.
It just comes together. Yeah, when
Yep.
you're talking, it's cool to talk about animation because recently the recent update of the game actually added a bunch of new, like more subtle things, with like new victory animations, new people who are the characters when they are defeated, they crumple in a new way, and all these new things that are being added on. And of course, I think a couple new sounds. I think Dog got a new howl in this update, and I'm still getting used to it myself. But it is a new idea, and that's the fun part about early access, right? Is being able to try out and all these different ideas and see what sticks and see how it works out. So
yeah,
it's very cool.
I do find it interesting that as we iterate on the characters, obviously we want it to be improvements, but we have found that people get sort of attached to the audio.
We remember the Tiara voice. We remember
that. Not just in other instances too.
Yes.
It does become something your ear gets used to and becomes strange when it changes.
It becomes foreign. It's suddenly something completely out of the ballpark when you're not ready for it. But hey, that is the part of what makes this. That's why we're here. That's what makes the idea of a early access situation kind of come to life. So it's very, very cool. So we'll go ahead and stick back on design. I got another one for you, Paul. Aaron asks, how does 86 come up with banger after banger for the OST? And what kind of work goes into making the audio in general? PP has a specific theme, so it'd be interesting to hear how you keep everything sound like it's from the same game.
That's high praise. Bangers, huh? That's cool.
Yeah, it's true, bro. It's just
I've never worked on like a retro wave style before, and so I think that was like the biggest challenge for me is sort of figuring out that aesthetic. And I've always kind of got my style of approach for how I like to make things sound, and so that's probably what makes it feel thematically the same. But I think it's always kind of like a growing experience and kind of honing in on what makes. Finding a nice balance between like the classic synth that you'd expect in this sort of 80s nostalgic vibe we're going for, but then kind of injecting the new into it. And I think we kind of approach it that way across all facets of the disciplines. But yeah, I like catchy music, and so I always try to get something kind of catchy in there and have the people nod in their head, but keep the energy up and, trying to make a game that feels good for something to fight to. It's like you can't really have like slow jams. Well, maybe you can. I don't know. Maybe we'll try it out sometime.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, I think just dialing in the energy and finding the 80s aesthetic was kind of like the biggest challenges for me, and it's been a really fun learning experience. Like I really love that kind of music now, and it wasn't something I was really into until the team turned me on to it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's really what makes it so interesting to me is, for example, I think my favorite song is probably probably Agent G's track. I love that track. It's just so much fun. It reminds me so much of like that Power Ranger aesthetic that he has already. But what makes it so interesting to me compared to any other current kind of community fighter is how much it has inspired others to make music that I see. For example, our music man Fire Tripper, a community member that we have in the Discord, is constantly throwing out different little practice riffs or tracks based on just the inspiration he receives from just being a part of the community. And I have yet to ever really see that much anywhere else in terms of a fighting game. So I find that to be just something that we have as a community that's very, very unique to our style.
Yeah, big shout out to Fire Tripper with all his cool jams in there. You know, I mean, he's keeping me on my toes, trying to take my job.
Yeah,
so
eventually you're going to be kicked off and he's like, I want that guy. He's making sick riffs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's very awesome. Yeah,
I see you, Fire Tripper.
We're watching you, bro. But yeah, so in the same vein, we'll go ahead and switch over from music to art. So MK asked, PP has a unique visual style. Did it go through any other design iterations, and how did you arrive at this look for the game?
So I generally had an idea already of what the aesthetic was going to be. It's just similar to the art that I do, my personal artwork. So there wasn't much change in that. Obviously, there was some development that had to be done in transitioning the illustrated style into the 3D Unity engine style, because I was new to working with Unity. So there was that. But overall, pretty much knew what I wanted to do. And then also with the characters, there isn't really any concept art. Every character portrait is almost the only art I've done for each character. I just make that, and then the rest is all completely done in my the animation that goes into the game. So
interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, because that's one thing I remember back in the past when you used to do the community streams, when you would go out and start working on working on animation or rigging on stream for people to look at. It just kind of goes to show that just that process of it's not always going to be exactly the same. It's going to be a little bit more different each time. And then it's what makes it so impressive that you still manage to still keep it in scope. Because one of the crazy things that people see when they see this game, they see giant star gladiator woman, and then they see a dog, and it's like those usually don't quite mix. But then as you see it, it still pops and still kind of makes sense in the overall scheme of what the game is trying to achieve. So that's something that I find very, very impressive that you have managed to succeed in so far. So we definitely appreciate that as a community.
Thank you.
All right, so yeah, we'll move on here. I think I'll still keep on you, Lee. I'll still keep hounding you here. Route asks, how did you go about making such a diverse roster, gameplay-wise and design-wise? So this kind of still commits to what we were talking about already.
It kind of goes back to what you were just saying, and I think, I kind of already had in my mind what the cast was going to be, and then gameplay-wise, generally I just wanted to have all the archetypes represented in their core form, and then also in their somewhat mixed, where you take two and sort of blend them. But mostly the idea was to have every character in its design and its gameplay represent the archetype as strongly as possible.
Yeah. And I want to kind of flesh that out with you, Will, in regards to the archetypes, because since one thing that's really cool about Punch Planet is when you jump into it, when you go out and see, like, if you go to the panel that's over in the indie area, the players who are kind of coming in, their fundamentals can kind of get them pretty far in terms of kind of just understanding how the game works and functions, which is very, very rare for an indie game when it comes to, like, something that might be a little different. Sometimes the inspiration might be a little out there, or might be a whole different type of a platform fighter itself, or in that same vein. So, like, for example, we have a fireball character, we have a rushdown, we have grapples, we have all these different archetypes that are very, very common, and I want to kind of understand how you manage to still kind of keep that and keep it consistent across the board when it came to the characters themselves. If you kind of understand what I'm saying. How do I make it consistent? Say it again? So when you're making a character, or when you're working on a character's archetype, how do you manage to still kind of keep that grounded in the engine that you're working on? Because with the DTE systems, that kind of make them can get kind of complicated with these designs. So for example, right, I think one of my most I want to say unique designs in this game is probably Robot or Android. because he's a fireball. He's also kind of sim-like, but he also has a fly. So he has all these other types of ideas that kind of make the archetype a little bit more different than most. And so I want to see how you kind of came to those conclusions.
Yeah, so when I started working on the archetype characters, you know, you have a general idea of what they want to do. Like with Arnold, he's got fireball, he's got zoning. That's generally the base, you know, just he has to do that. And then everything in between I kind of have free form to like
so you kind of have a little fun
happen.
with it.
Yeah, so when I want to have, like if I want to have a new move that pops up during development, you know, I'll explain that to Lee and say I need this type of animation because of this reason, and this, you know, I don't really have to justify it too much. I kind of just tell him what I need and he
I'm
gives it
doing
to
this.
me. Yeah. Yeah, once you get the base archetype down, you can kind of start playing with the little things. In Punch Planet, I always like to have ways to kind of fake things out or change what you think the other player is going to think you're going to do. So like Roy heavy kick, you can dash out of that.
Right.
Sid's charge normals, you can dash out of those. I always like to give those type of little options for
little
characters.
tricksies.
Even if it's not really part of their archetype. You could find ways to insert that in a little bit.
Yeah, and it keeps the game from getting too stale and getting too overdone. So absolutely. So yeah, the reason why I asked the question is because since we're now kind of getting to what is in the future for the Punch Planet team, right? Because when it comes to making characters, it's hard to you gotta kind of keep making it spicy and kind of changing up in order to keep people interested and engaged. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose Rip Torn's question here. He asks, how do you go about choosing character archetypes, and what different types of fighting game styles would you like to include in the future? I'll go ahead and start off with Lee on this one.
So yeah, I think I kind of covered how we select the archetypes in that we would just like to have the basic archetypes represented in the gameplay and the design. But for future archetypes, I want to use this time to talk about the 2 new characters that we plan to. We've already shown the portraits, shadow portraits in the character select. But so coming up, Mimi is the first new character. And she's going to be what I consider like a semi-stance character.
Interesting, okay.
So not a full stance character, but there's some trickery business going on there. And Renault, the second new character, they're going to be it's a big body, you can tell from the portrait.
Yeah, he's a pretty large man.
Not necessarily a grappler, kind of a rush-down bruiser, we'll say.
Okay.
And both characters are going to feature a unique movement mechanic that none of the other characters in the game have.
Very exciting. Yeah, I know a lot of I can already feel the PP Discord,
Punch
Planet Discord frothing at the mouth right now in terms of the information that we just gave out.
They're also a team.
Yes, yes, that's great. Yeah. So, in the same vein, and so we're talking about characters. So now, in the future of the game itself, the overall systems of what we want to add. So, like, for example, this question I have here, Eliza Kuhn asked, I'm gonna kind of flesh that a little bit more. He asked, any plans to add a replay system? And I also want to ask on in that, how about any other types of mechanics or systems that you want to add on to the engine at some point in the future?
Yeah, so right now the game is like in a state, kind of base state where we're not really adding more features to the PC version right now. I'm working on a big update to that version that will have much better foundation for single-player features, better netcode, and then stuff like replay, of course, and more stages, more characters, all that stuff. But it's going to be a big update. It'll be like our real release type thing.
Definitely the big one for sure. So yeah, guys, I think that was mostly all the questions I had that we wanted to go ahead and talk about. Thank you all so much for joining. Will, Lee, Paul, thank you guys so much for coming up here tonight. You guys, if you are interested at all in Punch Planet, we are currently, you can find it on Steam. You can just go type in Punch Planet, you'll easily find it. It's not too pricey. It's a nice little price range there. You can join the Discord at discord.gg/punchplanet. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/punchplanet. And then of course, we will be having a tournament here at EVO. You can find us over on the Team Spooky stream at Top 4 at about 5 p.m. Pacific daytime. So guys, thank you all so much for joining us. Will, Lee, Paul, I appreciate you guys for having me. My name is Swift, and you guys enjoy the rest of your event.